sister-in-law made fun of my wife for years for not marrying rich like her. But now her husband cheated and she's getting divorced while we're doing better than ever, and suddenly she and Mill want us to tone it down because we're splurging on our wedding anniversary, and they genuinely believe we're doing this just to spite them. My wife's sister Miranda has always been a nuisance in our lives, but now she is trying to make our lives even harder. For context, my wife and I first met during our college years. She comes from an upper-middle-class family while I grew up in a family with very little financial stability. To put it plainly, I had almost nothing growing up. Both of my parents worked incredibly hard every single day, but despite their relentless efforts, we barely scraped by. To make matters more difficult, they kept having more children, which only added to the financial strain. My childhood was defined by poverty. It wasn't just a passing phase or an occasional hardship. It was my entire reality. At one point, we even became homeless, a situation that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Looking back, I can see that my parents did try their best under the circumstances. They sacrificed a lot, and this is why I don't hold resentment towards them for that. However, as I grew older, I realized I didn't want to continue the cycle of poverty that had defined my life thus far. I studied relentlessly and worked tirelessly to improve my circumstances. Eventually, my hard work paid off. I earned a scholarship to college, and for me, when the opportunity came, I took it without hesitation. I knew college was my one chance to turn my life around, but not everyone in my family saw it that way. My parents and siblings were furious with me for leaving. They felt that by moving away, I was abandoning them and turning my back on my responsibilities to the family. But their anger didn't deter me though. I knew deep in my heart that this was the right choice for me. When I first met my wife in college, I was instantly attracted to her. She was beautiful, intelligent, kind, and had a warmth that drew everyone to her. But I was convinced that someone like her deserved to be with a man who could give her the world, someone who came from a stable, well-off family. Someone who could spoil her and offer her a life of comfort. I thought, that's not me. I was acutely aware of where I came from, and I feared that my past would always be a barrier between us, but it was actually my wife who pursued me. She was the one who asked me out on a date, something I'll never forget. From the very beginning, the chemistry between us was undeniable. Eventually, when I realized that I was in love, I made a promise to myself and to her. I vowed that I would work as hard as I possibly could to build a life for us. I told myself that no matter what it took, I would make sure she had everything she deserved. I have always lived by those words even to this day. But things weren't always smooth sailing, especially when it came to her family. Her father was kind and understanding. He recognized my background and supported our relationship from the start. Her mother, on the other hand, was a different story. From the very beginning, my mother-in-law was dismissive and critical of me. It didn't matter what I did or how hard I tried. She never missed an opportunity to remind me that in her eyes I wasn't good enough for her daughter. And then there was Miranda, my wife's sister. Even when I met them for the first time, all they did was make fun of me and my family background. They called me poor and uncouth to my face like it was nothing. Miranda in particular was the worst. At one point, she had the audacity to warn my wife about me, claiming that I might try to baby trap her just to get access to their family's money. It was an absurd and deeply insulting accusation to hear, and it made me feel degraded and unworthy. Whenever her mother or Miranda made their ridiculous comments about me, my wife would firmly put them in their place. She didn't just let it slide or brush it off. She made it crystal clear that she wouldn't tolerate anyone speaking about me that way, not even her own family. She would comfort them head-on, telling them to stop and demanding they show me the respect I deserved. But despite her best efforts to shield me, the hurt lingered. Knowing that her family thought so little of me and saw me as something less than human in their eyes was hurtful. After college, I was fortunate enough to land a really good job with a steady income and a clear sense of direction. My wife and I decided to take the next step in our relationship and move in together. From the moment we started living together, I made it my mission to take care of her in every way I could. Finally, having the means to support her felt like a victory. I insisted that she didn't spend a dime on our daily expenses. Whatever she earned, we put directly into savings for our future. I worked tirelessly, often long hours, to make sure that she never lacked anything she wanted. After 2 years of living together, I felt it was the right time to propose to her. And when she said yes, it felt like the happiest moment of my life. But not everyone shared in our joy. My mother-in-law and Miranda, my wife's sister, were anything but thrilled by the news. Miranda, as blunt and cruel as ever, told my wife repeatedly that marrying me was a mistake. Her words were harsh and biting, but one thing she said stood out more than anything else. According to her, people who come from nothing don't really amount to anything. That sentence hit me hard. My mother-in-law was no better. She told my wife that if we ever found ourselves in financial trouble after our marriage, we shouldn't expect any help from her. She made it clear that we were on our own from that day forward, as if that would deter my wife from marrying me. Fortunately, despite their negativity and the obstacles they placed in our path, my wife remained steadfast. She trusted me completely and believed in our relationship, in our future, and we got married. It's been 8 wonderful years since our marriage, and I can honestly say that we've never been happier. Our life together has been filled with love, growth, and shared accomplishments, and all the hard work I've put into building a stable and successful future has truly paid off. Recently, I achieved one of the biggest milestones in my career. I was promoted to a senior-level position at the company I'd been with for many years. Since my wife and I have chosen not to have children over the years, we've been able to save a lot. 2 years ago, we bought our dream home. It's a beautiful house with plenty of space and even a pool in the backyard. And last year, I bought my wife a brand new car, something she had always wanted. We take vacations regularly. Now I can confidently say that I've made it in life. I've built something incredible with the woman I love, and I couldn't be prouder of the life we've created together. You would think that, at this point, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would finally see that I've proven myself, that they would look at the life my wife and I have built and realize that their criticisms were misplaced. Surely there's no reason left for them to complain about me, right? Wrong? Even now, after everything I have achieved and everything I've done for my wife, they still find reasons to ruin our happiness. You see, unlike us, Miranda hasn't fared as well in life. 5 years ago, Miranda tied the knot with her boyfriend who, like her, came from a wealthy background. Their wedding was nothing short of extravagant, lavish decorations, an opulent venue, and every detail screaming wealth and privilege. During her wedding, Miranda didn't miss an opportunity to belittle my wife. She constantly made snide remarks mocking her for not marrying rich like she did. Miranda bragged endlessly about how her life was going to be far superior to my wife simply because of her husband's financial standing. After Miranda's wedding, her relationship with my wife deteriorated even further. She practically stopped seeing my wife altogether, claiming that she was ashamed to be associated with people like us. According to Miranda, we didn't belong in her world. We weren't wealthy enough, polished enough, or good enough to match the image she was trying to cultivate in her new life. Miranda started surrounding herself with only friends who shared her lifestyle and values. People who like her seemed to measure worth by the size of a bank account or the brand of a handbag. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law also sided with Miranda and excluded my wife and I for several family occasions. Miranda was mother-in-law's golden daughter, and both of them were exactly alike. Well, this year we found out that sister-in-law's rich ideal husband had been cheating on her behind her back. For a while, she had been growing suspicious of his behavior, and one day she caught him red-handed at a hotel with another much younger woman. Miranda made a huge scene, yelling and crying, demanding answers, but her husband didn't even try to deny what he was doing. Instead, he coldly told her he was done with her and promptly threw her out of their house. To make matters worse, Miranda has signed a prenup before their marriage that did not have any clause about cheating, unfortunately. Because of that piece of paper, she has now been left with absolutely nothing. Her ex-husband canceled all her credit cards, repossessed the car he had gifted her, and cut her off completely. In the blink of an eye, her extravagant lifestyle vanished. The fallout didn't stop there. With no access to the wealth she once flaunted, Miranda quickly discovered the fickle nature of her so-called friends. The same people she had surrounded herself with, her glamorous, wealthy social circle, abandoned her as soon as she could no longer keep up appearances. Overnight, she went from the queen of her world to an outcast. Now she's back living at home with my wife's parents. And since then, she has started to reach out to my wife to reconnect. It's weird that the same person who once belittled my wife for not marrying rich and who was ashamed to be seen with us is now trying to reconcile. Miranda has been calling and texting my wife, acting as if she wants to rebuild their relationship. I've outright told my wife to be cautious around her sister because to me, Miranda is a snake. She is manipulative and clearly looking for an opening to drag us down along with her. This week, I sent out invitations to everyone for my wife and my upcoming wedding anniversary. With my recent promotion, I have decided to go all out and plan something truly memorable. I have booked a beautiful, lavish venue, hired a talented caterer, and even brought an event coordinator to help make everything perfect. This is a chance to finally give my wife the kind of celebration she deserves, one that I've always dreamed of giving her. When we got married, we didn't have the means to throw an extravagant wedding. It's something I've always carried a bit of guilt about, even though my wife has never complained or asked for more. But now, with our lives more stable and my career at its peak, I feel it's the perfect time to give her everything she could ever want. However, as soon as my mother-in-law and sister-in-law received their invitations and learned the details of the celebration, the complaints started rolling in. My mother-in-law, true to form, was the first to object. She called my wife and told her she felt this wasn't the right year for us to throw such a grand party. According to her, It's insensitive to celebrate on such a big scale when Miranda got divorced just this year. Mother-in-law went as far as to suggest that we postpone the celebration entirely, pushing it to next year when presumably Miranda's situation would be less fresh in everyone's minds. Miranda has also accused us of trying to rub our happiness and wealth in her face while she's going through a lot. She claims that our decision to celebrate extravagantly is unnecessary when she lost her marriage just a few months ago. My wife, to her credit, did tell them outright that our anniversary celebration has nothing to do with them. She made it clear that if they felt too offended or uncomfortable to attend, they were more than welcome to stay home. But predictably, her words only fueled their outrage. Now Miranda has started leaving voicemails on my phone accusing me of deliberately trying to spite her by flaunting my wealth. She says I should at least compromise by keeping the event low-key out of respect for her current struggles. Honestly, I find her attitude frustrating and absurd. This celebration isn't about her. It's about my wife and me, our love, and everything we've worked so hard to achieve. It's baffling to me how Miranda can make our happiness about her misfortune and how my mother-in-law, who should be happy for my wife instead, chooses to enable Miranda's behavior. So, Reddit, am I wrong for celebrating our wedding anniversary? I have to say, all your ideas despite mother-in-law and sister-in-law further has really made me laugh out loud. I even let my wife read all the comments and she agrees with most of the comments. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law are always looking for some drama. They try to make everything about themselves, even though our wedding anniversary has nothing to do with them. Some of you have suggested uninviting them and honestly, I wish I could, but uninviting them would just cause more drama. Father-in-law would then back out and then my wife's grandparents might have something to say about it. My wife doesn't want that. Honestly, I just want this event to go smoothly. I want it to be focused on me and my wife. I want her to be happy and despite everything, I know she wants to be surrounded by her family. Okay, this week, my wife and I finally celebrated our wedding anniversary with a party I had spent weeks planning. Everything was going perfectly. The atmosphere was vibrant. The food was delicious and the guests were having a wonderful time. Most importantly, my wife was radiant with happiness. She wore a stunning pink dress that truly made her shine. This wasn't just any dress. She had seen this dress in the store months ago but had decided not to buy it thinking it was too pricey. What she didn't know was that I had secretly purchased the dress for her as a surprise. When I gave it to her a few days before the party, she was extremely happy. Throughout the evening, she received countless compliments from friends and family about how beautiful she looked. She was beaming, her joy evident to everyone around her. It warmed my heart to see her so happy. It was exactly what I had hoped for when planning this celebration. But of course Miranda couldn't let the night go smoothly. At one point during the evening, Miranda approached my wife. She was holding a glass of red wine. And as she got close, she spilled the entire glass onto my wife's dress. Everyone gasped in horror. The beautiful pink dress, the one my wife was so thrilled to wear, was completely ruined. I rushed to her side, grabbing tissues to try and block the stain, but it was no use. My wife looked devastated. Meanwhile, Miranda didn't even apologize sincerely or show any real remorse. Instead, she acted like it was just an accident, but I couldn't help but feel it was deliberate. Her actions felt calculated, like a way to steal the spotlight from my wife on a night that was supposed to be hers. My wife yelled at Miranda for not being more careful, but Miranda kept trying to turn the blame onto my wife, claiming the spill was by mistake and that it shouldn't be treated like such a big deal. Some of my wife's cousins who had witnessed the whole thing as well were quick to tell Miranda that she should apologize first instead of getting defensive. This only seemed to enrage Miranda more and her behavior grew even more entitled and combative. My wife pointed out that the wine stain wasn't coming off and that her beautiful dress was now ruined. However, Miranda, attempting to shamelessly brush off the entire situation, casually said that even if the dress was ruined, we could easily afford to buy another one if we wanted to. She asked my wife to stop crying and cause any further drama. At that point, I had had enough. I was furious with Miranda's complete lack of accountability, so I told her straight up that she had no right to talk to my wife that way. Also, I wasn't going to pay for another dress. If anyone should be responsible for replacing it, it was her. She had ruined it, so it was only fair that she should pay for it. Miranda scoffed at my suggestion, clearly offended that I would dare call her out in such a direct way. My wife, on the other hand, agreed with me. She told Miranda that her refusal to apologize clearly showed she had intentionally spilled the wine on the dress. She pointed out how outrageous it was for Miranda to suggest that we should just buy another dress instead of her taking responsibility for her actions. Miranda, ever defiant, tried to justify her behavior, but then mother-in-law came running to support her darling daughter. Mother-in-law yelled at us that we were being petty by asking Miranda to apologize publicly when she hadn't even done anything that big. Mother-in-law scoffed and told my wife that she was trying to belittle her sister unnecessarily. My wife told mother-in-law outright that she was willing to let go of the issue only if Miranda apologizes. But true to form, Miranda refused. At that point, I was fed up. I had already tried to be civil, tried to reason with them, but it was getting out of hand. I couldn't stand to watch them turn our celebration into a spectacle of childish behavior. My frustration grew as I turned to Miranda and said, "I'll be sending you the bill for the dress. If you don't pay it, I'll take you to small claims court." I wasn't playing games anymore. That's when my mother-in-law jumped in trying to defend her daughter again. She said that the dress was too expensive for Miranda to possibly pay for, as if that was an excuse for what happened. I told my mother-in-law in no uncertain terms to shut her mouth and to stop defending Miranda's behavior and enabling her lack of responsibility. I then asked my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to leave the party. I told them they were ruining the mood for everyone else and embarrassing themselves. At this point, father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Miranda stormed off in a huff. Father-in-law also had to leave with them because he was driving them. I watched them leave, and only after they left, I felt a sense of relief. After the party, I expected there to be tension. But what surprised me was the response from the rest of the family. I had thought that maybe some would side with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but I was wrong. To my relief, most of them understood exactly why I had kicked them out. Many of them approached my wife afterwards, offering their support and assuring her that given the circumstances, they would have reacted the same way. It felt like a small victory, knowing that at least the rest of the family saw through Miranda and her manipulative behavior. Anyways, ever since the party, things have not settled down with Miranda or my mother-in-law. Both of them have been calling and messaging me non-stop, furious at me. They both expect an apology from me for kicking them out of the party unceremoniously. Miranda also keeps saying how inconsiderate I was for threatening to make her pay for the dress. She has tried to guilt-trip me, claiming that she doesn't have a job or any savings after her ex-husband left her, so I should not ask her to pay. I haven't responded to any of them. I'm giving myself space to calm down and think it through. The more I think about it though, the clearer it becomes. What they did was wrong. I don't want to back out. I don't want to apologize for standing up for my wife, for protecting our celebration, or for demanding accountability from Miranda. It's been a while since I last updated anything here. Just wanted to quickly let you know all that after weeks of dealing with Miranda's refusal to take responsibility, we made the decision to finally take her to small claims court. We were done with the constant excuses, the manipulation, and the outright disrespect. We gathered all the evidence we needed. The CCTV footage from the event venue clearly showed Miranda spilling the wine on my wife's dress, as well as multiple witnesses who had seen the entire incident unfold. Everyone who was present at the party knew exactly what had happened, and there was no doubt in anyone's mind that Miranda had caused the damage and refused to apologize. For weeks after the party, Miranda had continued to refuse to take responsibility, doubling down on her stance and even accusing us of overreacting. When we sent her the bill for the dress, she outright refused to pay, still acting like it was no big deal. At the same time, my mother-in-law kept scolding my wife, accusing her of putting her little sister through unnecessary drama, but my wife and I were done being manipulated. So we decided to take them to small claims court. We had the evidence, the witnesses, and we weren't backing down. In court, Miranda tried to put on the same act, claiming that the wine spill was an accident and that we were overreacting. She even tried to guilt-trip the judge, saying how difficult her life had become since her divorce and that she couldn't afford to pay for the dress. But the judge wasn't swayed by her pleas. The evidence was clear, and despite her attempts to manipulate the situation, she had no choice but to pay for the dress. It felt like a huge victory. For the first time, Miranda was held accountable for her actions. She made a complete fool of herself in that courtroom, and the satisfaction of seeing her finally face consequences was worth all the frustration leading up to it. Even after all that, Miranda had not apologized. My mother-in-law has sided with her, but, honestly, it doesn't matter. The legal victory speaks for itself. My wife and I won. Since the small claims court ruling, my wife and I have decided to cut off Miranda, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law from our lives. The entire ordeal, from the wine spill to the court case, has made it painfully clear to us just how toxic and manipulative they all are. Even though my father-in-law didn't actively participate in their behavior, he has remained silent throughout this entire situation. He has not even once stood up for my wife or shown any support for us. His silence speaks volumes. At this point, my wife and I are honestly both exhausted by the constant negativity and lack of accountability of our family members. Every time we have tried to have a reasonable conversation with them, they have either deflected blame or tried to make us feel guilty. The way they treat us, especially my wife, is more than just hurtful. Cutting them off is a bit painful for my wife, but she understands that she needs to put herself first. It's been 4 months since my last update, and for the past 7 months, my wife and I have been in no contact with her family. We have been able to stay away from them. and for the most part, that distance has brought us peace. They had tried reaching out to us multiple times through calls, messages, and even through mutual family members, but we had stayed firm in our decision to cut them off. Then today, out of nowhere, Miranda showed up at our front door. It was unexpected and unannounced, and I could immediately tell by the look on her face that she wasn't here for a peaceful conversation. I asked her what she was doing here, but she immediately ignored my question and demanded to know if my wife was home. I calmly asked her to leave my property immediately. That's when she started getting aggressive, insisting that she needed to talk to my wife no matter what. She even tried to argue that I had no right to keep her away from her sister, trying to manipulate me into letting her inside. But I wasn't backing down. I reminded her that it wasn't just me who wanted to stay away from her. It was also my wife who had made the decision to cut her off after everything she had done to us. For years, Miranda had treated us like trash, constantly belittling my wife, making cruel comments about our relationship, and only showing up when it suited her. And now, out of the blue, she suddenly needed her sister. I told her that she had no right to show up at our door after everything that she had put us through. At this point, Miranda started to yell at me, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong in their family. She was frantic, accusing me of being the reason their family was broken up. Her voice was full of anger as she yelled that if I hadn't come into my wife's life, she could have found a better guy who would have been a more supportive brother-in-law, someone who would have fit better with their family. I was about to snap back at her, but before I could respond, I saw my wife's car pulling into the driveway. She got out of the car and immediately looked over, confused to see her sister standing there.